discussing, then you're by all means welcome to do so. Just before we begin, I'm just going to let you know that we are live streaming this interview, so as we speak this is appearing on the Professional Photographer website, as all of our interviews tomorrow will be as well. So if you aren't here tomorrow but want to catch any of tomorrow's interviews with Zed Nelson, Peter Dench, or the wedding photographer Crash Taylor, you can do that on the website. It does also mean, of course, if you're not meant to be here today, or you're here with someone that you shouldn't be with, just be aware of that fact, because any minute now you are going to be live on the web. So, JP, where to start? Well, why don't we try and start at the beginning, and maybe just tell us a little bit about how your career began when you were working in Paris as an assistant, and how you got to Paris.
I suppose the way it really began was obviously at school. I was studying something totally different, not photography at all. I began spending, in those days, more and more time in the darkroom and less and less time in my classes, and then decided it was time to follow what I wanted to do. So at the time I was studying in America, and I went to San Francisco, studied at the San Francisco Art Institute for a year, then went to France, spent a year in the south of France studying with actually a French photographer named Jean-Pierre Sud and his wife Claudine.
And it sounds a very idyllic lifestyle.
It was, actually, it was. But I mean, the thing that was really fascinating in that second year was learning about 19th century photographic processes. None of which has helped me at all in my working career, but it's still something that I love.
Right.
But no, but actually getting to Paris and actually beginning to work. I got to Paris, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Began working in a gallery called the Zabriskie Gallery, which still exists in New York, but not so much in Paris, who specialized in people like Lee Friedlander, Edward Weston, photographers like that. And then just by sheer blind chance, my dentist in Paris also happened to be Helmut Newton's dentist.
That's kind of lucky.
It was. I mean, it might not have been, but it was.
Yeah.
And he introduced us, and we began working together, me as his assistant. And then it just kind of took off from there.
So the first person you started working with was perhaps one of the greatest photographic icons of the last century?
I don't know, he wouldn't let me work with him straight away because I'd never assisted anybody. So he had other photographers break me in first.
Okay.
As an assistant, and teach me the ropes.
Right.
And then I worked with him, yeah.
Okay, so how long were you working with Helmut Newton for?
Not long, actually. Probably all of about a year,
right.
I'm told, straight through.
And what did you learn from him? I mean, a master to learn from.
Well, I think what I learned most from him was just to be decisive. You know, to not faff about, not, you know, really know what you want on a shoot. Because you've got time constraints, you've got money constraints, you've got model constraints, you've got all sorts of things fighting against you.
Yeah.
And the more messing about you do, the less you're going to get done in a day. Because, you know, if you're shooting for a magazine or if you're shooting for an advertising client, you've got X amount of shots or X number of shots to get done in a day. And unless you know what you're doing and you get on with it, then, you know, it's not going to get done. And he was one of those people who was absolutely sure about what he wanted to do and what he wanted to get out of an image.
Well, it's interesting because you've gone straight in there from at the commercial side. Is actually what you were learning was the reality of fashion photography being a business.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, what I was learning prior to working with Helmut was very much the art side of photography and not at all the commercial side. And so going in with him was a deep end.
Yeah,
definitely.
And who did you move on to after working with Helmut?
Prior to Helmut, actually the very first photographer I assisted was Guy Bourdin.
Okay, who's perhaps one of the most controversial, influential fashion photographers has been for a long time.
Up until 10 years ago, maybe even less. Largely forgotten.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he's been brought back into the limelight by his son Sam.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how was it to work with Guy Bourdin?
That was insane. I mean, he was a maniac.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples? I know of quite a few of those stories, but it'd be interesting to hear from you.
A typical story with him would be he'd go to see his astrologer every morning before a shoot at about 10 a.m., show up on the shoot, ask all the models their star signs, and if his astrologer had told him that he wasn't going to be getting along with any of those star signs that day, he would send the model home, but not straight away. He'd wait till their hair was done, makeup was done, they were dressed, they were on set. And then these poor 16-year-old American girls doing their first French Vogue shoot would get sent home, usually in tears.
Yeah.
He was a bit of a sadist around the edges.
Yeah, I mean, that is the reputation he has, but
Yeah.
a lot of the images he created at that time hugely influential now. So we've got Guy Bourdin and we've got Helmut Newton.
Yeah.
It's not a bad start. Who else are you going to add to that?
Well, because I'm half French, half American, and bilingual, and I was working in Paris as an assistant, I was sort of the go-to assistant for any American photographer coming to Paris. So I worked with some of my heroes. I got to work with Avedon and Penn, Bert Stern, Stephen Meisel, who was large, still quite unknown at that point.
Right.
But good people.
Yeah, very good people. But what were you learning at that stage? Because a lot of photographers will claim that they learned a lot as an assistant, but I have to be honest, and you know, I've been in professional photography 27 years now, and I've never met anybody who assisted that many of the legendary photographers.
What do you learn? You learn lots of tricks, you learn lots of little individual techniques, some of which you adopt, some of which you don't. You learn a lot about the politics of a shoot, what goes into working your way around an editor.
Yeah. And an art director.
An art director, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of what you learn, really. I mean, the photographic side of it is ultimately personal to each one of those photographers, so you don't want to take too much of that on board because you don't want to become a carbon copy of them. You don't want to become a pale imitation of whoever you're assisting. So
it's one of the conversations we've been having throughout the day with everybody we've been talking to. It keeps coming back to two key things, really, which is one is finding your own voice as a photographer.
Yeah, very important.
And then the second one is the importance of personality in a photographer.
Yeah.
And as we've said in both interviews, that actually, and I can say this having been an art director for many years, was that you commission 90% on the basis of the personality and 10% on the basis of the photography, but that photography's got to be good.
Well, that's an interesting